Mercedes F1 genius solution for comeback at the Dutch Grand Prix. So we're going to be going through that in today's video, so don't forget to like this video, and if you want more Mercedes F1 content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hitting that red button down below. But let's get straight into it. So obviously Mercedes W13 isn't bad, it's just a huge problem with porpoising. Former single-seater racer Ho Pin-tung says it shouldn't come to a surprise to the paddock that Mercedes are moving forward now that they've sorted their porpoising problems. Although Mercedes' run of podium finishes ended at the Belgian Grand Prix, George Russell almost narrowly missed out on the podium in a race where his teammate Lewis Hamilton crashed out on the opening lap. Led to fly the flag alone for Mercedes, Russell took the fight to Ferrari for the final podium position, but fell short by 3 seconds. It was, however, another solid Sunday for the Brackley squad, who, while trounced by Red Bull on a weekend where the RB18 was in a league of its own, was on par with the race of Ferraris. Tung says he wasn't surprised given that Mercedes' biggest problem in the early part of the season was their car bouncing. The team even declared after the Hungarian Grand Prix that the porpoising was no longer an issue, allowing them to turn their focus into developing the car and finding the downforce they had to scrub to eradicate the bouncing. I think Mercedes is definitely making progress, Tung told motorsport.com. This during the recent Viaplay F1 10-day presentation. Basically, the car isn't that bad. I've been saying that since the beginning of this season, they've had a huge problem with porpoising. From the moment they got that out, they were immediately competitive. It is very disturbing for the driver while driving, but also for engineers. The 39-year-old explained that why it was so difficult for Mercedes to get on top of the problem was because porpoising is very hard to replicate in a wind tunnel. If you look at the data, you have the car moving in the curves, the airflows are changing, he said. They're trying to stimulate all that in the wind tunnel. You have to imagine making a turn, it's so tight that a team knows exactly what ride height they know in a particular corner because they know it will give them the best balance for their particular corner. With porpoising, you're just trying to keep the car on track and don't get any details, he added. It makes a lot of sense that they took a big step when they got it out. With just one car scoring at the Belgian Grand Prix, Mercedes lost a bit of ground to Ferrari in the race for the second in the Constructors' Championship. The gap up to 41 points. Russell is 21 points off the pace in the fight for runner-up in the driver's standings. So when it comes to all this, I think it is honestly really important to see. Also, racing engineer Andrew Chauvelin of the Mercedes team also mentioned that downforce is coming for the Dutch Grand Prix. So he did keep it very, very brief, but we could see some great downforce that is going to be applied and also been changing, the game for the Dutch Grand Prix that is coming up. And I think that's going to be really, really huge. So will Hamilton have to take a penalty? This is another question that is up in the air. Mercedes have been inspecting the power unit used by Lewis Hamilton at the Belgian Grand Prix following his collision with Fernando Alonso. After being sent airborne in the opening lap tangle with Alonso at Les Combes, Hamilton's car was subjected to an impact registering over 40 Gs when it hit the ground. The severity of the impact left Mercedes concerned about potential damage to the power unit and gearbox, which were returned to the UK this week for assessments. Hamilton was told to stop on track by his team after initially being able to continue in the direct aftermath of the incident. Mercedes had fitted Hamilton's car for a third PU of the season in Belgium as part of their engine strategy to get through the rest of the year without incurring grid penalties. If it determined that the PU cannot be used again, Hamilton will likely face a grid drop at this weekend's Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. Hamilton has 2 other V6s left in the pool for the season, however both units have amassed high mileage, so introducing a new engine seems the most plausible solution. The 7-time world champion is also on his final MG UK Turbo, MG UK Control Electronics and Energy Store components, with any further changes triggering grid penalties. So this is honestly huge to see, and I think it is honestly fantastic. Now, when it comes to all this, obviously with everything that is happening, the clock is ticking when it comes to Mercedes still undecided on their F1 2023 concept. Now, the reason why I think this is such a big deal is because obviously 2023 is the season that they are going to be focusing on moving forward. We have heard interviews about Toto Wolff mentioning that time and time again. So Toto Wolff admits Mercedes are approaching a crossroads for the concept of their 2023 Challenger, with discussions ongoing. Heavily revised regulations were introduced for the 2022 campaign, Mercedes taking a very different approach to rival teams with their W13. The Silver Arrow's design was striking. The W13 featured featuring very unconventional side pods, termed zero pods with narrow air inlets as they went in search for a 9th Constructors' Championship in succession. Mercedes suffered arguably more than most through the porpoising earlier in the season, a bouncing phenomenon associated with ground effect aerodynamics. And even though Mercedes claimed to have now eradicated that problem, the team are without a win this season as they lag behind Red Bull and Ferrari for performance. So if Mercedes want to make major design changes for their 2023 Challenger, then they must start defining a direction. However, with the budget cap in play, Mercedes know the reality is that there will be little room for experience beforehand. It's a very difficult situation because we obviously have a certain concept of a car, said Mercedes principal Wolff as per motorsport.com. It's not like we can experiment a lot this year and just simply dial stuff out and test. So whatever we decide for next year needs to be carefully evaluated because clearly our data doesn't give us the results and doesn't correlate with the reality. We have massive swings in performance that we can't really get on top of. In this very moment, to take a decision for next year, whatever it may be, like changing the concept dramatically, how can you be sure that that's the better direction to go? Because clearly we'll be starting a little bit way back. It's quite difficult to say what is the concept. It is the chassis in its current shape. What that is that, it is the weight distribution. It is where you can put the mechanical and aero balance. Is it the body concept work? All these pillars of the car are evaluated, and it could mean that some of the stages go and some of them strays. Now, that's what we're looking for at the moment, and that's basically what he had to say about the whole incident. Ferrari principal Mario Binotto has cast doubt over the FIA's current ability to police their budget cap, following reports that Red Bull are looking to introduce a new lighter chassis later in the season. Most teams find their challengers are overweight at this stage, Wolff confirming that this is true also for Mercedes, though they would not be able to find room in the budget cap to build a new chassis. Look at the chassis, we wouldn't be able to introduce a chassis at that stage of the season, Wolff stated. We are massively overweight, which we haven't been able to dial out because we are trying parts on the car in order to solve our various issues, so we can't afford that, full stop. So what was aimed by introducing the cost cap absolutely hit the target. Is that they wanted to achieve the big teams, can't just throw money at it just yet. So honestly, I think this is fantastic, and what is in store is honestly going to be, really decisive to see. I really do think that they can get this sorted, and they get it sorted soon, because the 2023, they do want to start off very, very well. We saw how Mercedes, when they go off to a rocky start, it really is very hard to catch up, especially to other great teams such as Red Bull and Ferrari in the mix. So Mercedes-AMG F1 boss Toto Wolff believes the performance gap between Red Bull has become too big that it is vital to put an end to this situation next weekend in the Netherlands at round 15. On Sunday at Spa, Mercedes saw one of its drivers, Lewis Hamilton, retire on the first lap following contact with Fernando Alonso's Alpine at turn 5. The other driver, George Russell, finished the Belgian Grand Prix in 4th place in a car that clearly lacked the pace of the two Red Bull rockets at the Belgian track this weekend. In the fast lap exercise in Saturday's qualifying, the gap was even greater, with Lewis Hamilton relegated to 1.8 seconds behind Max Verstappen, while his teammate George Russell finished more than 2 seconds behind the Red Bull driver. Against this backdrop, Mercedes boss Toto Wolff is urging his troops to stick together. I don't think we can be satisfied with this weekend. If you look at Verstappen, he was on top of us all in Belgium, and I think honestly it was very scary to see. We really need to find out how we can improve our car because the gap is just too big, said Toto Wolff at the end of Grand Prix. We are giving the drivers a very difficult car to drive, and it doesn't have the pace on one lap, so we need to get out of this situation. Over the next 4 days, we will think together, aim for the next race, but also for next season. It's important that we stay united, keep our spirits up, and don't rotate too much. Between elation and depression, this weekend was a low point, but in Hungary 3 weeks ago, we thought we would absolutely win a race. So we are never going to give up. After the Belgian Grand Prix, Mercedes sits 3rd in the Constructors' World Championship, 41 points behind Ferrari, and only 8 races left this season. So it will be interesting to see if they can pull it off altogether and continue to push, further and further. Now, when it comes to Verstappen, quickly briefing on him, Verstappen is on a hot winning streak and he's unstoppable in Belgium as he easily won despite starting 14th on the grid after taking a penalty for using too much engine parts. The Dutchman delivered a peerless performance at Spa to continue his imperious form on his charge to a 2nd World Championship. Verstappen has won 3 races on the trot and will be determined to win again in front of his devoted fans on home soil at Zandvoort this weekend. A maximum 26-point haul and second consecutive Dutch Grand Prix victory would see Verstappen extend his advantage to 100 points with 7 races to go. Verstappen has won 9 of the 14 races so far this season and remains on course to break the record for most wins in a single season, and also the Red Bull driver could also eclipse Vettel's record of 9 consecutive wins. Verstappen is on a hat trick of successive victories for the second time this year. Further success in Zandvoort would take him on a 4 in a row, which would mark the longest winning streak we have seen so far in 2022. Ferrari had no answer to Red Bull's blistering competitiveness in Belgium, as Verstappen comfortably leads home at Red Bull 1-2 on Sunday despite starting from 14th on the grid. Carlos Sainz started from pole position but slipped to 3rd at the checkered flag, while Charles Leclerc recovered to 5th but was penalized for speeding in the pit lane and subsequently dropped to 6th. Ferrari are hopeful the two teams will be more closely matched at Zandvoort so they can challenge for their first victory since Austria. Overall, I think that simply the Red Bull is a faster car compared to what we've got in terms of efficiency. At Spa, you need efficiency from the aerodynamics and the power unit, but also we had tire degradation that we need to look into, because they were stronger in terms of tire degradation. So I don't think it hasn't been an outlier. They are faster than us. What I am hoping is that certainly the gap we have seen today, we will not see at the next races, because Spa has always been amplifying the gaps because it is a long track, and whenever you have an advantage in terms of efficiency, it is amplified and very obvious in such a circuit. So yes, we hope to be back in the next few races to be closer, while we still believe they have slightly faster car. But tire degradation has been the biggest element affecting the performance today, which we need to understand and address because it is very important for the next races. So when it comes to all this, I think it is really important, guys. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I'll see you soon. Peace.